The Telegraph. The Forgotten War Which Made Transylvania Romanian. By Chris Leadbeater. January 3, 2019. Sometimes, the world can seem set in stone. You can gaze at the map and believe that it has always been that way, that the border which divides one country from another has always followed this mountain ridge or that river, that one celebrated place has always been aligned with the state of which it is declared a part, that a certain region, heavily associated with one nation, has always been a stitch in that particular tapestry. You might certainly think this of Transylvania. There can be few segments of the European landmass which seem more closely linked to their domestic mothership. You might even argue that Transylvania is Romania, that Romania is Transylvania, a totemic emblem which defines the country in international eyes. True, the area's image, all cape-swishing Draculas and sharp-toothed castles on lonely crags, may be a little on the Halloween side of things, but it is inseparable from the general perception of Romania, a tattoo on Bucharest's arm which cannot be erased. And yet, leaving aside questions of population and ethnicity, Transylvania has only been officially tied to Romania for a century. Indeed, an exact 100 years ago, in the mists of January 1919, it was, effectively, still in the process of becoming Romanian, soldiers inching west across its forested, furrowed contours, eating into terrain that was nominally Hungarian. The era of outsiders considering this enclave of vampiric legend and Gothic reputation to be a symbol of all things Romanian was still decades into the future. Although Bram Stoker's famous novel had been in print for 22 years, the broader silver screen treatment that would turn Dracula into the stuff of global nightmares was not yet even a spark in the Hollywood directorial consciousness. Instead, the wider world did not look to Transylvania with much fascination at all. It was, rather, a region with no proper national identity, a bone for which several dogs had been prepared to fight, only without the strength to claim their prize conclusively. Of course, it was not alone in this. The European pages of the Atlas changed hugely in the second decade of the 20th century, as the firestorm of the First World War burned away a sizable swathe of the Old World and replaced it with something freshly etched. New and reconfigured states, Poland and Czechoslovakia among them, would emerge as the bullets and brutality of 1914 to 1918 killed off the two empires which had held much of the continent in their grip. The Austro-Hungarian realm which had extended its reach far beyond Vienna and Budapest was consigned to the past, so was the Ottoman sphere of influence, which had stretched from Constantinople, Istanbul, into the Balkans and beyond, for almost 6 centuries. Transylvania, which had long been caught between the two, found itself on the verge of a different dawn. Romania itself was hardly a concrete piece of the European jigsaw as 1919 appeared. Although various parts of what now constitutes the modern country, Wallachia and Moldavia, as well as Transylvania, had existed as principalities since medieval times, a Romanian state, of sorts, had only really solidified in the late 19th century. Moldavia and Wallachia had both been under the Ottoman boot, but as the Turkish superstate entered its twilight years, so the pair had torn themselves free, initially, in 1859, as the United Principalities of Moldavia and Wallachia, a halfway house still under Ottoman suzerainty, later, in 1881, as the independent Kingdom of Romania. It was still holding this precarious position when 1914 arrived, and the globe was spilled into the inferno. Romania survived the First World War through a mixture of denial and deception, staying neutral for the first 2 years, then clandestinely allying itself with the Entente powers, Britain, France, Russia et al., in the summer of 1916 via a secret treaty. This promised to give to Romania various slices of Hungarian territory with majority Romanian populations, in exchange for a successful assault on the latter's less guarded east flank. It was a courageous move. And also, it seemed at first, a foolish one. Romania attacked to the northwest after declaring war on August 27, 1916, but this brought a swift and vicious response from the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire et al., to the extent that, by December of 1916, Bucharest was in enemy hands. Left marooned amongst its foes by Russia's withdrawal from the conflict in 1917, Romania sat on its haunches to lick its wounds, and effectively conceded its independence, as well as parts of its domain to both Bulgaria and Austria, via the harsh terms of the Treaty of Bucharest, on May 7, 1918. And yet, there was still fight left in the dog. As the First World War turned finally and decisively in favor of the Entente powers in the summer of 1918, Romania glimpsed its opportunity. And just as the rest of Europe was looking to stamp down the flames in the autumnal hours of 1918, a country which had appeared to be cowed in 1916 threw its last stockpile of fuel onto the bonfire. On November 10, one day before the armistice on the Western Front, Romania redeclared war on the Central Powers, and, 2 days later, began a reinvigorated northwesterly military push into Hungarian land. Its target was a Transylvania that, ethnically, it regarded as its own, but which had long been a possession of either Hungary or the Ottoman Empire. It had been a formal element of the Austro-Hungarian Empire since 1867, but as the autumn of 1918 turned into another grim winter, much of it tumbled into Romania's grasp. On December 1, the newly convened National Assembly of Romanians of Transylvania and Hungary loudly declared the unification of those Romanians and of all the territories inhabited by them with Romania. On December 7, Brașov, now the second biggest city in Transylvania, fell. On Christmas Eve, Cluj, the regional capital, went the same way. And as 1919 tripped over the horizon, and a distracted, weary continent felt its way towards the First World War's flawed conclusion, the Treaty of Versailles, June 28, 1919, Romania drove home its advantage. Satu pretty much on the modern-day border with Hungary, was captured on April 19. By August 4, when the gunfire ceased, Romanian troops were patrolling the streets of the Hungarian capital. Budapest would, inevitably, be returned to Hungary, but much of what was taken in this seismic 9-month postscript to the First World War, Transylvania included, was formally ceded to Romania in the Treaty of Trianon on June 4, 1920. It is an agreement which still outlines much of the border between the two countries 99 years on. Can you see the scars of this conflagration if you travel in the region? Not really. Romania has been through much worse in the intervening century, from a fascist government as evil as that which arose in Germany during the Second World War, to a communist regime which was arguably the most oppressive of any behind the Iron Curtain. It is the breeze block buildings of the latter epoch which give the Bucharest skyline its brute force, not least the gargantuan palace of the parliament, built by the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, which ranks as the heaviest building on earth, but a tour of Transylvania will take you to places where you can see little evidence of trauma. It is rustic and agricultural, fields fanning out at the side of its highways, and even its cities have a certain quiet charm. Brașov is engagingly pretty, caught in the direct shadow of the Carpathian Mountains, spreading out around the flagstones of Piața Sficiului, cafes and restaurants fringing the edges of the square. Sibiu is, perhaps, even more attractive, a regional outpost which took its time in the spotlight as European Capital of Culture in 2007 and restored its medieval center to something which looks more akin to Italy than the communist East, Galateria's pinned to the perimeter of Piața Mare. Timișoara, in westerly Banat rather than Transylvania, but taken in the Romanian advance of 1918-19, will surely benefit from taking on the same artistic role in 2021. Yet hints that Transylvania has always been a European crossroads, home to people of different languages and creeds, are there if you search for them. The colossal Black Church, a Gothic bastion in Brașov, bears the names Schwarzkirche, German, and Făcut Templom, Hungarian, as well as the more lyrical Romanian of Biserica Neagră, a gentle reminder that it was constructed in the 14th century by the city's German speakers. The Lutheran Cathedral in Cebu tells a near-identical backstory. Brașov's one-time German name, Kronstadt, Crown City, is visible in its coat of arms. You even find this connection to yesteryear in Bran, on the border of Transylvania and Wallachia, where the castle loosely connected to the Dracula yarn, and the most popular tourist attraction in Romania as a consequence, was also constructed in the 14th century, by Transylvanian Saxons, the region's medieval inhabitants of German ethnicity. You cannot quite avoid the Uber vampire here. He haunts the tomato puree-infused menus of eateries in the town, and the souvenir stalls below the fortress. But you can, if you pay attention to its history and culture, avoid the idea of Transylvania as a bloody Romanian cliché. It is far more fascinating and varied of heritage than that.